The ring was worth more than everything Naomi had ever owned in her life. She knew that because Julian had told her. 3 times. Once when he proposed. Once when she tried to give it back. And once when he walked out the door and left it on the kitchen counter like it was trash. Naomi Hayes stood in the apartment she could barely afford, holding a diamond ring she would never wear, and understood something fundamental about the world. Money didn't just change what you could buy. It changed what people thought you were worth. Julian Cross had loved her. She believed that. For 3 years, she'd believed it. He was a billionaire. She was an architecture student working 2 jobs to keep the lights on. He drove a car that cost more than her student loans. She took the bus. He wore watches that could have paid her rent for a year. She wore her grandmother's old silver bracelet and felt rich when she did. None of that had mattered. Not at first. When they met, when he walked into the coffee shop where she worked and asked for something that doesn't taste like it was made by a machine, she'd laughed and made him an espresso that was perfect. He'd come back the next day, and the day after that. By the end of the week, he knew her name. By the end of the month, he knew her dreams. She wanted to design buildings, real ones, not just sketches in a notebook. Structures that changed skylines, that made people stop and look up. Julian had listened. He hadn't laughed. He hadn't told her it was impossible. He'd said, "Show me," and she did. 3 years. 3 years of late nights in his penthouse, her blueprints spread across his dining table while he worked beside her on deals that moved millions. 3 years of him showing up at her tiny studio apartment with takeout from restaurants she couldn't pronounce. 3 years of falling in love with a man who seemed to see past the money, past the gap, past everything that should have kept them apart. Then, one morning, he was gone. No warning, no fight, no explanation that made sense. Just a text message. "I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry." That was it. 6 words. After 3 years. After the proposal. After she'd already started planning a wedding she knew she couldn't afford, but was trying to figure out anyway. Because she loved him and he said he loved her and love was supposed to be enough. Naomi had called him 17 times that day. He didn't answer. She went to his office. Security wouldn't let her in. She went to his penthouse. The doorman, the same one who'd greeted her by name for years, looked at her like she was a stranger. Mr. Cross left instructions. "You're not to be allowed up." She stood on the sidewalk outside his building, rain soaking through her jacket, and felt the world tilt sideways. 2 weeks later, she saw the photos. Julian Cross, billionaire tech mogul, engaged to Victoria Lennox, heiress to one of the oldest banking families in the country. The announcement was everywhere. Forbes, Business Insider, every gossip site that mattered. They looked perfect together. Same world, same wealth, same polished, untouchable beauty. Naomi looked at the photos for exactly 5 minutes. Then she put her phone down, took off the ring, and made a decision. She was done being the girl who wasn't enough. That was 4 years ago. Now, Naomi stood in the lobby of the Monroe Building, one of the tallest structures in Chicago, and waited for the elevator that would take her to the 53rd floor. She wore a tailored suit, charcoal gray, sharp lines, hair pulled back in a sleek bun, heels that made her taller, straighter, stronger. She looked like she belonged here, because she did. Naomi Hayes was no longer a student. She was an architect, a real one. She'd graduated top of her class. She'd worked at a firm for 2 years, designing structures other people put their names on. Then she'd done something most people said was impossible. She'd started her own firm, Hayes and Associates, small, lean. Just her and 2 junior architects she'd hired fresh out of school. But they were good, and they were hungry. And 6 months ago, they'd won a contract that changed everything. The Westlake Project, a mixed-use development on the South Side. Affordable housing, community spaces, green design. It was everything Naomi had dreamed about when she was sketching buildings in a notebook while serving coffee to people who didn't see her. And now it was real, under construction, her design, her vision. She'd rebuilt her life, piece by piece. Without Julian, without his money, without anything except the work and the people who believed in her. And then, this morning, she'd gotten the call. The client wanted to meet, in person, at their office, 53rd floor of the Monroe building. Naomi had assumed it was about the project, a design question, a budget concern, something normal. She was wrong. The elevator doors opened. Naomi stepped into a lobby that screamed money. Floor-to-ceiling windows, marble everything, art that probably cost more than her entire firm's annual budget. A receptionist with the kind of smile that was polite and cold at the same time. "Naomi Hayes," Naomi said. "I have an appointment." "Of course, Miss Hayes. This way." She was led down a hallway, past glass-walled conference rooms, past offices with views that went on forever, to a corner suite at the end of the hall. The receptionist knocked, opened the door, and stepped aside. Naomi walked in and stopped, because sitting behind the desk, in a suit that probably cost what she used to make in 6 months, looking exactly the same except older, sharper, more tired, was Julian Cross. The room went very quiet. Julian stood slowly, like he wasn't sure what to do with his hands, like he'd practiced this moment and forgotten everything the second it became real. Naomi, her name, in his voice, after 4 years. It hit her harder than it should have. She didn't move, didn't sit, didn't speak. She just stared. Julian exhaled. "I know this is a shock. I asked you here because you're the client." It wasn't a question. It was a statement, flat, cold. "Yes, the Westlake project. You're funding it. Part of it. Through a development group I own." Naomi's jaw tightened. "You didn't tell me. I couldn't. The contract was signed before I knew your firm was involved. By the time I found out, the project was already moving forward. I thought about pulling out. I thought about transferring it to someone else." "But what?" Her voice was sharp now, cutting. "But your design is perfect," Julian said. "And pulling out would have killed the project. I couldn't do that. Not to the community. Not to you." Naomi laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. "Not to me. That's rich. Naomi, don't." She held up a hand. "You don't get to say my name like that. Not after what you did." Julian flinched. I know I hurt you. And I'm not here to make excuses. Then why am I here?" He paused, looked at her like he was trying to figure out if she could handle the truth. "Because the project is in trouble. The city is threatening to pull permits. There's a zoning issue, a legal challenge from a neighboring property owner. If we don't resolve it in the next 2 weeks, the whole thing gets shut down." Naomi felt something cold settle in her chest. "And you want me to fix it. I want us to fix it. Together. There is no us. I know." His voice was quieter now. "But there's a project, a community that needs this. And you're the only person who can save it." She wanted to walk out. Every part of her wanted to turn around, leave this office, and never look back. Let him deal with it. Let the project fail. Let him understand what it felt like to lose something that mattered. But she couldn't, because the Westlake project wasn't about Julian. It was about families who needed affordable housing, kids who needed safe spaces to play, a neighborhood that had been ignored for too long. If it failed, Julian would move on to the next investment. Naomi would lose the biggest contract her firm had ever landed. But the real loss would be the people who never got the chance to live there. She took a breath, let it out slowly. 2 weeks, Julian blinked. "What?" "I'll give you 2 weeks. We fix the zoning issue. We save the project. And then I never see you again." He nodded. "Understood. One more thing. Anything. You stay out of my way. I don't need your advice. I don't need your input. You handle the legal side. I handle the design. We work in parallel, not together. Julian looked like he wanted to argue. He didn't. Okay. Naomi turned to leave. Naomi. She stopped. Didn't look back. It's good to see you, Julian said quietly. She didn't answer. She just walked out. The next 2 weeks were hell. The zoning issue was worse than Julian had let on. The neighboring property owner wasn't just raising objections. They were threatening a lawsuit, claiming that the Westlake project would block their view, lower their property values, create traffic congestion. All of it was technically accurate. None of it mattered in the way they claimed. Naomi knew why they were really fighting it. Because the Westlake project was affordable housing. And affordable housing, in their world, meant poor people. And poor people lowered the tone of the neighborhood. She'd heard it before. She'd fought it before. She knew how this game worked. What she didn't expect was how hard Julian fought beside her. He showed up to every city council meeting, every mediation session, every backroom negotiation with lawyers and developers who thought they could intimidate a young black woman into backing down. Julian didn't intimidate. He dismantled, with facts, with perceivant, with the kind of quiet, relentless pressure that only someone with his resources could apply. And through all of it, he kept his distance, like she'd asked. He didn't try to talk to her about anything that wasn't the project. Didn't ask about her life. Didn't try to explain what had happened 4 years ago. It just worked. One night, they were alone in a conference room at his office. It was past midnight. The city was dark outside the windows. Coffee cups were scattered across the table. Documents everywhere. Naomi was going over the revised site plans for the 3rd time, looking for anything the opposition could use against them. Julian was on his laptop, drafting a response to the lawsuit. The silence was comfortable. Too comfortable. That was the problem. Her phone buzzed. A text from one of her junior architects. The structural engineer had flagged a concern about the foundation specs. Nothing urgent. But it needed attention tomorrow. Naomi typed back a response, put the phone down, and felt Julian watching her. What? She said, without looking up. Nothing. You're staring. I'm not. She looked at him. He was definitely staring. Say it, Naomi said. Say what? Whatever you've been wanting to say for the past 2 weeks. Julian leaned back in his chair. He looked tired, not just physically. The kind of tired that came from carrying something heavy for too long. Your firm. It's successful. Yes, you did that on your own. I had help. Good people. But yeah, I built it. I'm proud of you. Naomi's jaw tightened. Don't what? Don't act like you have any right to be proud of me. You weren't there. You don't get to claim any part of what I've done. Julian nodded. You're right. I'm sorry. They went back to work. But the tension didn't leave. 20 minutes later, Naomi slammed her pen down. Why did you leave? The words came out before Naomi could stop them. Julian's hands froze on the keyboard. He didn't look up. I'm serious, Naomi said. 4 years. Not a word. And now you're here, acting like we're colleagues who never had a history. I need to know why. Julian exhaled, slow, controlled. You don't want to know. I do. Naomi, tell me. He finally looked at her. And for the first time since she'd walked into his office 2 weeks ago, she saw something crack in his expression. Something raw. My father threatened you. Naomi went very still. He found out about the engagement, Julian continued. He didn't approve. He never approved of anyone I dated who didn't come from the right kind of family. But you were different. You were serious. And that terrified him. So what did he do? Julian's jaw tightened. He had you investigated. Found out about your student loans, your mother's medical debt, your finances. And he made me an offer. He would pay off everything. Every cent. Make it all disappear. On one condition. Naomi's breath caught. I had to end it. Cleanly. Completely. No explanation. No contact. If I refused, He'd make sure you never worked in architecture again. He had connections. Enough to bury you before you even started. The room was silent. So you took the deal, Naomi said. Her voice was flat. I took the deal. To protect me. Yes, by destroying me. Julian flinched. You thought what? That I'd be better off not knowing? That I'd just move on and never wonder why the man I loved disappeared overnight? I thought you'd be better off without me, Julian said quietly. I thought if I stayed, my father would ruin you. And if I left, at least you'd have a chance. Naomi stood up. Her chair scraped against the floor. You don't get to make that choice for me. I know. You should have told me. You should have let me decide. You're right. I would have fought. We could have fought together. I know, Julian said again. His voice was breaking now. But I was 27 years old and terrified and convinced that the only way to protect you was to let you go. And I've regretted it every single day since. Naomi stared at him. She wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. She wanted to throw something. But all she felt was tired. So tired. What about Victoria? She asked. A business arrangement. My father set it up. She needed the family connection. I needed him off my back. We were engaged for 6 months. Then she met someone else. Someone she actually loved. We called it off. Quietly. And you never thought to call me. To tell me the truth. I did. 100 times. But by then, you'd already moved on. You'd started your firm. You were building something real. And I thought if I came back into your life, I'd just mess it up again. Naomi closed her eyes. You're an idiot. I know. And a coward. I know. And you broke my heart. I know. His voice was barely a whisper now. She opened her eyes, looked at him, really looked, at the man she'd loved. The man who'd left. The man who was sitting across from her now, looking like he'd been carrying this for 4 years and didn't know how to put it down. I don't forgive you, she said. Julian nodded. I don't expect you to, but I understand why you did it. He looked up, surprised. That doesn't make it okay, Naomi continued. But I understand. The silence stretched between them. Not comfortable, not easy, but something. What happens now? Julian asked. Now we save the project, Naomi said. And then we figure out what comes after. The city council hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday. Final decision. No appeals. But 3 days before the hearing, something happened that neither of them expected. Julian's father showed up. Richard Cross, 71 years old. Still sharp. Still powerful. Still convinced that his money gave him the right to control everything and everyone around him. He walked into Julian's office without knocking. Without warning, Naomi was there. They were reviewing testimony for the hearing. Richard stopped when he saw her. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went cold. Father, Julian said. He stood up. His whole body had gone rigid. Julian, I need to speak with you. Alone. Anything you need to say, you can say in front of Naomi. Richard's gaze slid to her. Assessed her like she was a piece of furniture he was deciding whether to buy. Ms. Ace, I'd heard you were back in my son's life. I was hoping the rumors were wrong. Naomi stood slowly. Mr. Cross, I thought we had an understanding, Richard said. Not to her. To Julian. We don't, Julian said flatly. Not anymore. I paid a significant amount of money to manipulate me. Yes, I remember. And I'm done letting you do it. Richard's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was listening to you 4 years ago. This woman will ruin you. No, Julian said. You did that. The moment you made me choose between the person I loved and your approval. Richard turned to Naomi. He'll regret this. And when he does, he'll blame you. Naomi met his gaze. Steady, unflinching. If you're done, Mr. Cross, we have work to do. For a moment, Richard said nothing. Then he turned and walked out. The door closed behind him. Naomi exhaled. She hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath. "I'm sorry," Julian said. "For what?" "For him. For everything he put you through." "Stop apologizing," Naomi said. "He's not your responsibility. What he did isn't your fault. But I let him 4 years ago, yes, but not now. Now you stood up to him. That's what matters." Julian looked at her. Something in his expression cracked open. "I should have done it then. You're doing it now. That's enough." But it wasn't over. 2 days later, the opposition filed an emergency motion. New evidence, they claimed. Environmental concerns that hadn't been addressed. The hearing was delayed indefinitely. Naomi knew immediately what had happened. Richard Cross had made a call, pulled a string, found someone willing to throw a wrench into the process. "He's trying to kill the project," she said. They were in Julian's office again. Late. Always late these days. "I know. Can he do that?" Julian's expression was grim. "He can try. He has connections, money, influence. But so do I. This isn't a game, Julian. This is people's lives. I know. And I'm not going to let him win." He made calls to lawyers, to city officials, to people who owed him favors. Naomi watched him work, saw the side of Julian she'd always known existed, but had never fully seen. The businessman, the strategist, the man who could move pieces on a board most people didn't even know they were standing on. Within 48 hours, the environmental concerns were dismissed. The hearing was rescheduled, and Richard Cross' main contact at City Hall quietly resigned after an ethics investigation was opened into his financial ties to several developers. Julian never said what he'd done. Naomi didn't ask. She just knew that when the next hearing came, they were ready. Naomi and Julian walked in together. The room was packed. Supporters of the project on one side, opposition on the other. News cameras in the back. This wasn't just about zoning anymore. It had become a symbol, a fight over what kind of city Chicago wanted to be. Naomi stood at the podium. No notes, no prepared speech. Just the truth. "My name is Naomi Hayes. I'm the lead architect on the Westlake project, and I'm here to tell you why this matters." She pulled up the designs on the screen behind her. Clean lines, green spaces, buildings that fit the neighborhood instead of dominating it. This isn't just about housing. It's about community, about giving people a place that's safe, sustainable, and theirs. The opposition says it will lower property values. But what they're really saying is that they don't want certain people in their neighborhood, and that's not okay. She paused, looked at the council members, at the people in the audience, at Julian, sitting in the front row, watching her like she was the only person in the room. "I grew up in a neighborhood like the one we're trying to build. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us housed. We lived in a place that wasn't safe, wasn't clean, wasn't ours. And I watched her fight every single day just to give me a chance at something better." Her voice didn't shake. She wouldn't let it. "This project is for people like her. People who work hard and deserve a place to live that doesn't feel like punishment. And if you vote this down, you're telling them they don't matter, that their lives aren't worth investing in, that the only people who deserve good housing are the ones who can already afford it." She stepped back from the podium. The room was silent. Then one person started clapping. Then another. Then the whole side of the room erupted. The council voted 30 minutes later, 7-2 in favor of the project. Naomi walked out of the building and into the Chicago evening. The air was cold, clean. She could see her breath. Julian followed her. Didn't say anything. Just stood beside her. "We did it," Naomi said finally. "You did it." She turned to look at him. "What happens now?" "I meant what I said. You never have to see me again if you don't want to." Naomi was quiet for a long time. Then, "What if I do?" Julian went very still. "What? What if I want to see you again?" "Naomi, I'm not saying I forgive you. I'm not saying we go back to how things were. But maybe we start over, from the beginning. No history, no assumptions. Just two people who care about the same things. Julian stared at her. Are you serious? I don't know yet, she said honestly. But I think I want to find out. He smiled. A real one. The first she'd seen in 4 years. Okay. They stood there in the cold. Two people with a past that was complicated and a future that was uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, Naomi felt like she could breathe. 6 months later, the Westlake project broke ground. Naomi was there. Hard hat, blueprints, watching as the first foundation was poured. Julian stood beside her, not as the investor, as someone who cared. They'd been seeing each other, slowly, carefully, coffee once a week, dinner when their schedules allowed. Conversations that didn't center around the past, just the present. Who they were now, what they wanted. It wasn't easy. Trust didn't rebuild overnight. And there were still moments when Naomi looked at him and felt the hurt all over again. But there were also moments when she laughed, when she felt seen, when she realized that the man she'd fallen in love with was still there. Just older, wiser, more honest about his mistakes. The first real date happened 3 months after the project broke ground. Julian picked her up, not in a limo, in a normal car. He'd asked where she wanted to go. She'd said somewhere they'd never been together before, somewhere without history. They ended up at a small Ethiopian restaurant on the south side. Bright, loud, full of families and laughter. They sat at a corner table and ate with their hands and talked about everything except the past. What's your favorite building? Julian asked. In Chicago? Anywhere. Naomi thought about it. The Pantheon in Rome. You've been? No, but I've studied it. The dome, the oculus. The way light moves through the space. It's perfect. And it's been standing for 2,000 years. What makes it perfect? It doesn't try to be anything other than what it is. Form and function in complete harmony. Julian smiled. That sounds like you. What do you mean? You don't try to be anything you're not. You just are. Completely. Honestly. Naomi looked down at her plate. I wasn't always like that. When? When I was with you. Before. I was always trying to fit. To be the person who belonged in your world. You did belong. No. I was pretending too. There's a difference. Julian was quiet for a moment. I never wanted you to pretend. I know, but I did it anyway. Because I thought if I was myself, you'd see all the ways I didn't fit. And you'd leave. And then I left anyway. Yeah, you did. They sat in silence. Not uncomfortable, just heavy. I'm not that person anymore, Naomi said finally. I don't pretend. I don't fit into boxes. And if that's a problem, it's not, Julian said. It's what I love about you. Naomi looked up sharply. Don't what? Don't say love. Not yet. We're not there. Okay. He paused. But when we are, I'm going to say it. I'm going to mean it. 4 months in, Naomi introduced Julian to her mother again. It hadn't gone well the first time. Her mother, Beverly, had liked Julian initially. But after the breakup, after watching her daughter spend months barely functioning, she developed an opinion about Julian Cross that was very clear and very negative. Why are you doing this? Beverly asked when Naomi told her. Because I want to. Baby, he hurt you. I know. And you're just going to forget that? No. I'm going to decide if I can forgive it. Beverly looked at her daughter. Saw something in her eyes that hadn't been there 4 years ago. Strength. Certainty. You're different now. I am. You don't need him. I know. That's why I'm choosing him. The dinner was at Beverly's apartment. Small. Cramped. A world away from Julian's penthouse. He showed up on time. With flowers for Beverly and a bottle of wine he clearly had no idea if she'd like. Beverly answered the door. Looked him up and down. Mr. Cross. Miss Hayes. Thank you for having me. I didn't have a choice. My daughter made me. Naomi, standing behind her mother, closed her eyes. Mom, what? I'm being honest. Julian smiled. Not his polished business smile, a real one. Slightly nervous. I appreciate the honesty. They sat down to dinner. Beverly had made catfish, greens, cornbread, food that meant something, that carried history. This is incredible, Julian said after the first bite. Don't try to butter me up. I'm not. I'm just telling the truth. Beverly studied him. You broke my daughter's heart. I did. You think showing up here with flowers fixes that? No, ma'am. I don't think anything fixes it. I'm just hoping that if I spend the rest of my life trying, it might mean something. Beverly was quiet for a long moment. Then she passed him the cornbread. You're going to need to do better than that. I know. Good. Eat. They ate. And slowly, carefully, the conversation shifted, away from the past, toward the present. Beverly asked about the Westlake project. Julian asked about her work, her life. Naomi sat between them and felt something settle that had been unsettled for a very long time. At the end of the night, as Julian was leaving, Beverly pulled him aside. You hurt her again, and money won't save you, she said quietly. I'll make sure of that. Julian nodded. Understood. Good. She paused. But if you do right by her, you'll have me in your corner. And I'm a lot more useful there than against you, Julian smiled. I'm counting on it. One evening, they were walking through the construction site. The buildings were starting to take shape. Steel frames against the sky. You could see it now. The vision becoming real. I'm proud of you, Julian said. Naomi smiled. I'm proud of me too. I mean it. You did this. Without me. Without anyone's help. I had my team. I had the community. I had people who believed in the work. And now you have me, if you want. She stopped walking, looked at him. Do one? Have me? Julian asked. Want you? He was quiet. Then, I don't know, do you? Naomi thought about it. Really thought about it. Not the version of Julian she'd loved 4 years ago. The version standing in front of her now. Flawed, honest, trying. Yeah, she said. I think I do. Julian's smile was slow, genuine. Good, because I'm not going anywhere this time. You better not. They kept walking, through the site, through the neighborhood, through the streets where Naomi had once felt invisible and now felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The Westlake project opened 18 months later. Full occupancy within 3 weeks. Families moving in. Kids playing in the green spaces. A community center that hosted everything from after-school programs to job training. Naomi stood in the lobby on opening day, surrounded by people who had made this possible. Her team. The city officials who'd fought for it. The residents who were making it home. And Julian. Always Julian now. He'd changed. She'd changed. They both had. Into people who understood that love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up. About honesty. About fighting for the things and people that mattered. 2 years after the project opened, Julian proposed again. Not in a restaurant. Not with cameras. Just the two of them, standing on the roof of the tallest building in the Westlake complex, looking out over the city. The sun was setting, orange and pink bleeding into purple. The city stretched out in all directions, lights beginning to flicker on as the day ended. I know I don't deserve a second chance, he said, but I'm asking anyway. Naomi looked at the ring. Simpler than the first one, more meaningful. A single stone, elegant, understated, nothing that screamed wealth. Just something that said forever. She didn't answer immediately. She let the moment sit. Let herself feel it. The weight of the question. The history behind it. The future it promised. You're right, she said finally. You don't deserve it. Julian's face fell. But I'm giving it to you anyway. The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise. Slow, warm, complete. He slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly, like he'd measured, like he'd planned, like he'd been carrying this moment with him for months, waiting for the right time. "I love you," he said. "I never stopped." "I know," Naomi said. "I love you too, even when I hated you." That was the problem. They stood there, engaged again. 4 years older, wiser, scarred but healing. "What do we tell people?" Julian asked. "The truth, that we messed up, that we fixed it. That love is messier than anyone admits, but worth it anyway." "Your mother is going to kill me," Naomi laughed. "Probably, but she'll come around." They stood on that rooftop until the stars came out. Two people who had lost each other and found their way back. Not because it was easy, because it mattered. The wedding was small. Immediate family. Close friends. Grace, from Diane Cole's church, who Naomi had met while working on community projects. Thomas, who had become a mentor. People who had walked with them through the hard parts. Beverly insisted on doing the catering. Julian's mother, who had quietly divorced Richard 2 years earlier and was building her own life, helped with flowers. The two women worked together like they'd known each other for years, united by a shared understanding that their children had earned this, had fought for it, deserved it. The ceremony was held in the Westlake Community Center, not a church, not a fancy venue. The place where the work lived, where families gathered, where kids played, where the neighborhood became what Naomi had always dreamed it could be. Naomi designed her own dress. Simple, elegant, no veil, no train. Just a white dress that fit her perfectly and let her move. Let her breathe. Let her be exactly who she was. Julian wore a suit, not one of his $15,000 ones. Something simpler, tailored but understated. He looked nervous. He looked happy. He looked like a man who knew exactly how lucky he was and wasn't taking a single second for granted. When Naomi walked down the aisle, there was no music. Just the sound of people standing, of breath being held, of a moment that felt bigger than the room could contain. Beverly walked beside her, not giving her away, walking with her, supporting her, the way she'd always done. At the altar, Naomi took Julian's hands. The officiant was a friend from architecture school, a woman named Lisa who had known Naomi since the beginning, who had watched the whole story unfold. "Marriage," Lisa said, "is not about perfection. It's about showing up. Every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." She looked at Naomi and Julian. "You two know that better than most. You've seen the worst of each other. You've hurt each other. You've been apart. And you chose to come back. Not because you had to, because you wanted to." The room was silent. That's what love is. Not a feeling. A choice. Made over and over. In 1,000 small moments. Until the moments become a life. The vows were simple, honest. No promises of perfection. Just promises to try. To be honest. To fight for each other and the things they believed in. Naomi went first. "Julian, 4 years ago, I thought losing you was the worst thing that could happen to me. I was wrong. The worst thing was losing myself. You leaving forced me to rebuild, to figure out who I was without you. And I'm grateful for that. Because the person standing here now is someone I'm proud of. Someone who doesn't need you, but chooses you anyway." She paused. "I'm not promising to be perfect. I'm promising to be real, to tell you the truth even when it's hard, to fight with you when we disagree, and to fight for you when the world tries to tear us apart. I'm promising to build a life with you, not for you, with you." Julian's eyes were bright. He didn't try to hide it. His turn. "Naomi, I was 27 when I met you. I thought I was a man. I wasn't. I was a boy playing at being powerful. You showed me what real strength looked like. Not money, not influence. Just the courage to be yourself in a world that wanted you to be smaller." He took a breath. "I failed you. I let fear and my father and my own weakness come between us. And I've spent 4 years regretting it. 4 years learning how to be the kind of person who deserves a second chance. His voice cracked slightly. I'm not that scared boy anymore. I'm a man who knows what he lost and will spend the rest of his life making sure you never doubt that you matter, that you're seen, that you're loved. Not because of what you've built or what you've achieved. Just because you're you. Naomi smiled, tears running down her face. Happy ones. Lisa looked at them both. Do you, Naomi Hayes, take Julian Cross to be your husband? I do. Do you, Julian Cross, take Naomi Hayes to be your wife? I do. Then by the power vested in me, and honestly by the power of everyone in this room who's been waiting for you two to figure this out, I pronounce you married. You may kiss. They did. And when they kissed, the room erupted. Not politely, loudly, joyfully. The way people celebrate when they've watched something break and then watched it heal. Cheering, clapping, whistling. Kids running up the aisle. Grace crying openly. Beverly wiping her eyes with a handkerchief. Julian's mother smiling like she'd been given back something precious. At the reception, Naomi's mother pulled her aside. She was older now, slower, but her eyes were still sharp. You happy? She asked. Naomi nodded. Yeah, Mom, I am. Good. You deserve it. So do you. Her mother smiled. I got you. That was enough. They stood there together, mother and daughter. Two women who had survived everything the world threw at them and come out stronger. Later, during the first dance, Julian whispered, Thank you. For what? For giving me another chance. For choosing me. For believing that people can change. Naomi looked up at him. You did change. That's why I said yes. I'm still going to mess up. Probably often. I know. So will I. And we'll figure it out. Yeah, Naomi said. We will. They danced. Surrounded by people who loved them. In a building Naomi had designed. In a community they'd fought to create. Two people with a complicated past and an uncertain future. But together. Finally. Honestly. Completely. Later that night, after the guests had gone home and the community center was dark and quiet, Naomi and Julian stood on the rooftop again. The same place where he proposed. What are you thinking? Julian asked. That this is real. That we're real. We are. And that I'm terrified of losing it. Julian took her hand. You won't. Not because I'm perfect. Not because I'll never mess up. But because I know what it costs to lose you the first time. And I won't make that mistake again. Naomi looked at him. Believed him. Okay, she said. Okay. They stood there, husband and wife. Two people with a complicated past and an uncertain future. But together. Finally. Honestly. Completely. And somewhere below them, in the buildings Naomi had designed, families were sleeping in homes that were safe and affordable and theirs. Kids were dreaming in bedrooms with windows that looked out over a neighborhood that believed in them. That was the real victory. Not the love story. Not the second chance. The work. The community. The belief that people deserved good things just because they were people. Naomi had fought for that, and won. Everything else was just a gift. 5 years later, Naomi stood in front of a different building. Taller, more ambitious. A mixed-use tower in downtown Chicago that would combine affordable housing, commercial space, and community facilities across 42 floors. Hayes and Associates had grown. 8 architects now. A reputation that spoke for itself. Projects across 3 cities. A waiting list of clients who wanted what Naomi offered. Beautiful design that didn't forget who it was for. Julian stood beside her. Not as an investor this time. Just as her husband. Watching her work the way he'd always watched her work. With quiet pride and the understanding that this was hers. He was just lucky enough to witness it. You did it again, he said. Naomi smiled. We did it again. No, you did. I just write checks. You do more than that. Maybe, but this is yours. They stood there, watching construction crews prepare the site. watching the neighborhood gather to see what was coming, watching the future take shape. Do you ever think about what would have happened? Naomi asked. What do you mean? If you'd never left? If we'd gotten married the first time? If none of the bad stuff had happened? Julian thought about it. Sometimes. Why? I think we would have failed. He looked at her, surprised. I mean it, Naomi said. I wasn't ready. I didn't know who I was yet. I was still trying to fit into your world instead of building my own. And you were still letting your father make your decisions. She paused. We needed to break, to grow separately, to become the people we are now. Otherwise, we would have spent our whole lives wondering who we could have been. Julian was quiet for a long moment. Then, you're right. I hate that you're right, but you are. Naomi laughed. I usually am. Don't get cocky. Too late, they stood there. Husband and wife. Partners. Two people who had learned the hard way that love wasn't enough if you didn't know yourself first. But once you did, once you'd built something solid on your own, love could be the foundation for everything else. Behind them, Beverly approached. She was 73 now, moving slower, but still sharp, still watching, still making sure her daughter knew she was never alone. You two done being sappy? She asked. Naomi grinned. Never. Good, because I'm hungry and you promised me lunch. They walked away from the site together. 3 generations of strength. 3 generations of women who had refused to be made small by a world that tried. And one man who had learned, slowly and painfully, that the best thing he could do was stand beside them and support the work without trying to control it. That was growth. That was love. That was family. Not perfect. Not easy, but real. And worth every single hard moment it took to build.